Hi, welcome back to my channel. Okay, this is I'm filming this in November. So it's been about half a year since I sat down and filmed and uploaded and anyway, welcome to my wrap up. After the video kind of, I don't want to say blew up because it hasn't reached 100K yet, but ever since my book video, people have been requesting to, see more book related videos from me. And so I thought a wrap up would be a good start and something that kind of like feels a little bit natural on my channel, because usually I do K-pop and fashion stuff and I don't want to like completely switch my content. So I thought this would be a good thing. So from the title, you can see I have a really time consuming job. I actually have 2 jobs. So as a girl with 2 jobs and like no time, this is what I read in 2025. Was this a good reading year? Absolutely freaking not. I don't like my bangs. I don't like my hair today at all. Anyway, you can see like a steady decline of my reading. It's really sad, but not reading enough books or not reading that many books means I can go in a little bit of depth into what I liked about books and like give you a review along with my thoughts and what I read, instead of like, I read this and this and this and this and this and I rated it this and this. This is kind of boring, right? So, and I'm going to walk you through my year based on the books that I read. Kind of nervous. Why am I nervous? Yeah, I'm a little nervous to film, and I don't know why. Okay, anyway, so 2025, as I said, was not really a good reading year for me. Also, kind of like a little, not necessarily a disclaimer, but a lot of things that I do read on my Kindle, so I only have like I think 4 physical books. I started 2025 with a DNF. It was a buddy read between me and my best friend, and we wanted to read 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. That was bad. I did not like it. I read 3 Holly Jackson books. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder with my friend, which was a buddy read, and then we decided to read 5 Survive, which was really bad. And then I also read The Reappearance of Rachel Price. I think I'm getting ahead of myself. No, I read that in 2024. Also, I can tell you, I did not like The Reappearance of Rachel Price either. I gave that 2 stars. Anyway, so 5 Survive I thought was really bad. I DNF'd it about 54% in. It's just, I did not care. I shut the book and I was like, well, I exited out of the app. So I was like, I'm not reading anymore. Can you tell me what happens? And my friend told me what happened at the end. And I was like, okay, I'm so glad that I DNF'd it. The book was really boring and not engaging because it took place in this VR the entire time. I feel like there had to be something else that like had to like grab my attention. And the characters were all just so boring and not interesting at all that I was like, sometimes I just have to like read you my reviews, okay? Because this was January 15th, right? I said none of the characters were likable, and not even in a fun way, because sometimes characters aren't likable, but it's like a fun way, like an antagonist, right? And so I was like, Red's inner voice was dreadful to read. When your setting is in one place, you got to keep the plot quick, the plot moving, the twists quick and engaging, the character dynamic interesting, but none of it was to be found in the story. It dragged on so much. One of the least enjoyable reading... Damn, I do not hold back. I was like, one of the least enjoyable reading experiences ever. Thank God I didn't waste my time finishing it, because not even the end sounded like a saving grace for the first part of the book. My friend, however, liked it, kinda. She agreed that it was very slow and kind of boring, but she did like the twist in the end. So then I DNF'd another book, and it's called A Court of Ravens in Ruin by Eliza Rain. And honestly, my review is DNF at 11%, boo, tomato. I value my time too much to even read another word of this. And I don't even remember what this was about. Even reading the description, I have no recollection of this book. I just know I have a reading update at 5% that says, I already hate this. I don't like the writing, but I could overlook that. It's the bad foreshadowing, terrible exposition, and lore dropping that's making me roll my eyes to the back of my head. Sure as Odin, leave me alone. The dialogue is also bad. Okay, so moving on from that. I then read... Damn, another DNF. Oh my god. Okay, but this one I feel like is a little controversial. So this one is Spark of the Everflame, and I feel like everyone and their mother loved it. Everyone was so obsessed with this. Everyone was like recommending it. Everyone loved it, and everyone loved like the romance and the female character and whatever. So I picked this up and I tried to like keep my expectations managed and like low. I DNF'd this anyway. Technically, I gave it 2 stars, but I DNF'd it at 64%. My review of this book is not good, because this makes me question, did we read the same book? Because when someone's like, oh yeah, the female protagonist is like strong and like cool and whatever, and like I go into this expecting certain things, and then I like Okay, my review said, am I the only one who thought DM was yet another insufferable female main character who's supposed to be intelligent but is disrespectful and stupid at every turn? There's no logic in her behavior simply to make her strong or determined or righteous. I'm tired of reading female characters like her. And I remember that everyone said that she isn't like the normal like romance female protagonist. So I went into this thinking, oh, she's cool. And I remember that she is like, I think she's like a human or whatever, and she is like a healer, and obviously she's like special, but she knows that she has like magic, right? But she doesn't tell anyone and whatever. But she goes into this palace to help this kid, and then there's this dude who murdered her mom, and she's attracted to him, I think. And it's just so stupid, because and I have this thought with a lot of other books that I'm going to get into in a little bit, but well, not in a little bit. I read this like a couple of days ago, so you have to wait a few minutes to hear me talk about this. But what I hate is when a female protagonist is supposed to be smart, and we're told and maybe even shown that they're smart, and they always put their survival first. Why on earth would you write that female character in a way that goes against everything that we've learned? Like, what's her name? Pen? Whatever. The female character in this one, she's like, oh, I gotta stay hidden, and I gotta, keep my head down, and I can't speak out of turn, and this is so dangerous. And then what does she do? She like speaks out of turn, and she is like offensive, and she like goes the extra mile to draw attention to herself. And I'm like, this is not what I was promised. This is not the land of golden honey and milk and whatever. I'm lactose intolerant. This is not the land of golden honey that I was promised. So anyway, I did not like it. I think I have reading updates on this one. At 19%, I said, I might have given this a bit too much credit in the beginning. I liked it just fine, but your mother goes missing 6 months ago and you finally meet the guy who you saw her last with, only to not ask him about her at all. Also, for making such a big fuss about her being so good and so skilled and so smart for her age, she's a terrible healer. At 22%, I said, I can't with any of the names in the book. Please tell me the love interest is not named Luther. I have the same thought with, what's it called? I think it's called Quicksilver, where the main protagonist is called Kingfisher. Brother, we as a society need to up our standards. Oh my God, I DNF'd so many books, because the next one is also with DNF. I should have just... Anyway, it doesn't matter. I started the audiobook Nothing Like in the Movies, which is a sequel, but I think all of the books, even though they're in a series, are standalones, kind of like the Twisted whatever series, where each book deals with like a different character from the series, but you can read them independently. So I started this and I DNF'd it at like chapter 5. It's just that I didn't really, because it's solely a romance, right? And I don't know if I just didn't click with it because it's a romance book that I listen to as an audiobook, because usually I listen to audiobooks when they're not like romance or fantasy. I listen to audiobooks when I don't have to immerse myself in a story quite as much. So I didn't feel that one. Maybe I'll pick it up at another time as like a physical copy and like start reading it again, because I didn't immediately hate it. Another audio read, and this time this is my first finished book of 2025, and I finished this, mind you, in April. The audio book I listened to was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. And technically I only listened to this because 1, everyone loved the book, and 2, I was apartment hunting at the time, and I couldn't listen to music anymore because it was out and about so much, and so I needed an audiobook, and Spotify gave the opportunity to listen to it for free, and so I did, and I listened to it in one sitting. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. It was really raw and rough and dealt with a lot of things that are really hard to talk about, and I like Jeanette McCurdy, and I think she deserved way better. I really liked it, and what I really liked was that she herself narrated it. Good for her. Good for her for healing. Then I can't believe a blonde man has me acting up like this. I read King of Scars. Solely for Nikolai. Honestly, I think my review just said, oh no, you're telling me I developed feelings for a blonde man? Nikolai, what have you done to me? And to be honest, yeah. I was a little apprehensive to read King of Scars for some reason. I don't know why. Sometimes I just have this feeling, when books intimidate you, and it's not necessarily that this intimidated me. Like the Poppy War intimidated me, for example. I pushed off reading that for so long because I was so scared of it. Kind of same with the Mistborn series. I don't know why I was so scared to read this. I went into this and I loved it. I really, really liked it. I missed the Grisha verse a lot. I also love What's her name? Hey, what's her name? She is not in the description of this book. Why is this all about Nikolai? Where's my girl? What's her fucking name? I'm thinking of Jenya, but it's not Jenya. And so I'm immediately thinking of Alina, but it's not Alina. We all love her. What's her name? Zoya. She is amazing. The thing is, technically, I'm still reading Rule of Wolves. I started it on June 7th. I've read chapter 1 and I haven't progressed past it. I don't know why, because I really, really liked the first book. But for some reason, I picked up the second book. I read chapter 1 and I was like, I can't do this right now. And I thought that it would pass and I just had to like read a palate cleanser maybe, or I read something in between. But for over half a year, I haven't picked the book back up. Technically, I'm still reading it, but I'm not. Maybe I'll read it in 2026, which is kind of sad because by then a lot of things will be lost on me from the first book. You know what I mean? You will kind of realize that I have more to say about the books that I just recently read, obviously, because I read this about like a year ago and I don't really have much recollection of what I did or didn't like about it. But let me quickly go into the updates on this book. Damn, I had a lot to say about this. Damn, oh my god, okay, so my first thought about this book, it wrecked me. The beginning with Nina and Matthias. Can you, because I started this book on a train and I started crying on the train. I cried on the train whenever I read about Nina. At 69%, I said, check in because this book seems to be very long and I don't have many thoughts or much to say. It's odd how little and yet how much I care about the characters whenever POVs switch, but I would like to see more Nikolai and or Zoya, if I'm being honest. I know we need Isaac, but I don't care much for him. It's 71%. I said one mention of Kaz and it's over. I miss him. I miss Inej. I miss the gang. At least we have Nina. Oh yeah, Nina has this other like romance kindling on or whatever, which I wish her all the best, obviously, but I haven't moved on. Even if she has, I have not. I love that my 3 next updates are, oh god, a fictional wolf is making me cry, and oh my god. Then I read Sunrise on the Reaping, and don't hate me, I gave it 3 stars. I don't know what it was. I just could not connect with the characters or the story. And the thing is, I think that we kind of know that Haymitch enters the games. We know that he wins, and we know that the capital is like unfair. We know what the games entail. And so I feel like nothing really shocked me. Nothing really surprised me. I don't know. I saw a lot of reactions of people crying, like absolutely bawling their eyes out at the very end of the book, and I just didn't care because I knew that Leonor, spoiler alert I guess, Leonor was destined to die. Like obviously Haymitch is not gonna win the games and get his happy ending, and we know that from Katniss's point of view he is not a man that's mentally well, and so we kind of like knew what was coming. And so I felt like I don't know. I don't know. I also feel like, and I don't know if that's her writing style, I feel like the writing was a little bland at times, and I don't know. I think objectively I think the book was good. It's just that subjectively I didn't really connect with Leonor, and so I didn't really care about her, and I didn't really care about the romance. I cared more about the friendships that Haymitch made along the way. Am I absolutely obsessed with the book? No. Did I like the memes that came out of it? Yes. And I liked I like the 2 girlies, you know what I'm talking about? The one with the snake or whatever, and then the other one, the friend, Haymitch's friend. Also, I know that book Haymitch is crazy different from movie Haymitch, but it was so hard for me to picture a young version of Haymitch. And so for some reason in my head, it was just like the actor who did Haymitch in the Hunger Games movies that was like running around on screen, and it was just, I don't know. My imagination really failed me at this one. And so I think that was also a marker of why I did not enjoy this one as much. I then read did I read the entire series? Okay, I read the entire trilogy. Is it a trilogy? It's a trilogy. I read the entire trilogy by Sarah A. Parker. She also wrote, I think, When the Moon Hatched. I loved the writing in this one. So overall, I have very conflicting feelings about this because the writing throughout the series was really good. And then the rest of it was not. So the first book I gave 3 stars. I think it like started out, or it was supposed to be like a Rapunzel retelling or something mixed in like with a vampire stuff, because main Girly is like a human in this tower and she's like feeding her blood to her vampire landlord or whatever, and she develops like feelings for him, and then she like, there's also a merman. And honestly, I'm so fucking salty about the merman storyline because it was so cute. It was like her and the merman were so cute together, and they had like feelings for each other. And then in the second book, it was just completely dropped, and I was like, damn, there we go with the consistency. But that was also something that was really lacking throughout the entire thing. Consistency overall with like not only plots and storylines, but also characters and the character traits. That just bothered me a whole lot. Disregarding the fact that in the first book, literally nothing happened. Nothing happened. I could not fucking tell you what happened. Everything I said is what I remember what happened because nothing happened. At least still, I was kind of invested and I was kind of intrigued, and so I read this and then I immediately got the second book to like keep reading. I like to go blindly into books, and so I went into this. I said, wow, the writing is like magnificent, but I'm still confused as to what the plot is supposed to be. And at a certain point in the book, you kind of like foresee, okay, here's the problem. This is where, this is the solution, and how do we get from point A to point B? That never really happened. It was just a bunch of vibes, which was so odd. And also, I was never really sure who the love interest was supposed to be. About halfway through, I said, okay, so we finally have something akin to a plot. I don't mind that it took this long for something to happen. Actually, I am fully on board and thoroughly entertained. And then I also said at 66% in, I wish we'd gotten a more mature and feminist take where Girly realized that her hate and spite was turned towards the wrong person, that she should have directed her anger at Warden and not Zali. Oh, right, because Warden is like her vampire landlord dude who she has like feelings for, and Zali is like this other woman from this like kingdom or whatever that he's supposed to marry so they can like ally or whatever, and Girly is like jealous, but she's directing her anger towards the female character instead of the dude that she has feelings for, who's kind of like alluding to the fact that they have something special going on. I don't know, I just kind of wished we didn't have like the women lead drama or whatever, because I'm freaking over that. Also, I started to get really tired of the whole back and forth between them. Little did I know that the whole like back and forth thing would continue throughout the fucking entire series. The back and forth between her and the vampire landlord, not her and the other woman. That would have been a very interesting take though. Okay, book 2, I also gave 3 stars. My overall review, damn, is really long. I'm just gonna read it to you because I don't have any recollection of what happened. I think I only remember, so in book 1, she gets shipped off to another country and she's supposed to marry the dude who runs the country, and he is enemies with her vampire landlord in the other country. Yeah, okay, so anyway, my review was, I think I keep reading because the writing is so good. It's still a shame I wasn't fully hooked until I was 94% in. Damn, okay. And yet I can't stand anybody. So many chapters started with nightmares that it got boring, and I caught myself skim reading. And once again, the plot is paper thin and barely to be found. What we have established previously slipped from the author's grasp. Orlith? Girly. Orlith's drug abuse was completely disregarded. Kai and Warden's secret working together remains unexplained, and Kai's and Orlith's relationship just evaporated. Oh, right. The merman and the vampire landlord worked together at some point, which is so odd. Don't ask me about that storyline. Since he seems to have found himself a miraculous girlfriend and he has completely forgotten about main Girly after the first chapter. Right. So remember how the merman was like in love with the girl? That was given up. That was so, anyway, I don't even know, the storyline was so stupid that he went and like found another mute mermaid. Anyway, Orlith felt like the same person and yet an entirely different character, but in a bad way. I understand that her descent into self-loathing is a spiral that takes time, but it does not make for an entertaining read. She was repetitive and made a lot of really stupid decisions despite having been described verbally by other characters and by the author as smart. And that is what I fucking hate. Remember when I talked about that a few minutes ago? Even though he's toxic, Warden, the vampire landlord, seems to be the only one with somewhat redeeming qualities. I still don't know how I'm feeling about the ending of this book, but what I do know is that I'm very tired of the constant back and forth between him and Orlith. I remember being annoyed at that. This brings me to the romance in general. We've opened up many doors in book 1, and somehow we've closed them all now. I can't root for anybody. I don't even want to root for anybody. And perhaps you could argue that this is the point, that there is no wrong or right, just people trying to survive through shady and desperate measures. See how I'm trying to give my critique the benefit of the doubt too? I'm so fucking annoyed at everything, and I can see why, but still, I'm trying to handle this with complexity and critical thinking. But that doesn't negate my subjective feelings. But then we wouldn't have established Warden as the main love interest. It's clear that out of the choices that she has, which one the bad choice is? Orlith thinks Kanan is the right, I don't fucking know how to spell and pronounce anyone's names. Kanan is the right choice when he's not, and to her, Warden is the wrong choice when it's made abundantly clear that he's the one we're supposed to be rooting for. Just once I wish Orlith actions Orlith's actions had consequences. She keeps pushing Rorden away, and yet she gets weak and goes back to him one way or another every time. It makes her resolve seem feeble, and it makes her spineless. We've been through that in book 1. Her leaving should have been the second to last straw. We could have made him one final with one final showdown, maybe one big lie on Orlith's part in this book that cleaves them apart. But alas, we kept spinning in circles. And this book would have benefited from heavy editing and rewriting. Much was unnecessary, not enjoyable. The writing is definitely the series' saving grace. Dude, my reading updates are kind of crazy because I hated it all throughout and I still kept reading it. Anyway, the third book in the series. The third book I gave 2 stars, and my review is just the way this book wouldn't exist if Rorden and Orlith would just fucking talk to each other. And I think that sums it up pretty well. I hate the miscommunication trope. I hate when problems could be solved by just talking to each other. I understand that omitting feelings or omitting the truth or omitting certain things kind of like heighten the stakes of a plot. And I understand that sometimes for a romance that is very good and can be very good, but needs to be handled in a certain way so that execution doesn't lag and suffer. And this just made me want to burn my brain. My first update was 7% in, and I said, so is everyone in the series just a psycho? That tells you enough. I have so many thoughts on this one. I really did not enjoy it. I didn't enjoy like the reunion. I didn't really enjoy anything about this. I don't know why I pulled through. I think at this point I was just it's kind of like quicksand, you're in too deep to save yourself anymore and you just like sink. Let's talk about something else. I was like, okay, I want a stupid read. I want a dumb, quick kind of like palette cleanser, because I can't read too many fantasy books in a row, like too many good fantasy books in a row, because it just muddles my brain. The third book made me suffer so much. I would just wanted something quick, something bad, so that I can jump into something good later on. And I wanted this to be, I don't even want to say the title. Desire. I wanted this book to be Desire in His Blood by Zoe Draven. I DNF'd this 30% in. I gave it 1 star. I did not like it. I said I need this to be brutally stupid, bad, and trashy, but I feel like there's a difference between good, bad, and trashy and bad, bad, and trashy. And this was definitely bad, bad, and trashy. And honestly, I don't really remember anything, because I remember she was like a finance girl for her father, and he was like in debt, and there was this alien species, and the alien wanted to marry her, and the dad was like, yeah, you're doing that, so they settled the debt, and then she went with him, and I don't remember much more. I just remember that there was like instant attraction, and I hate that. Like, if you are supposed to hate your enemy, I understand, like, damn, I hate him, but he's fine, but like letting anything beyond that get to you and like having your thoughts be consumed by him, or actually I think there was a scene where they immediately started like making out, or it was like hot and spicy and heated, and I'm like, no, that is not what I'm looking for. No, that is so far removed from reality. I don't care. So the next one, I was like, okay, maybe this is like good, bad, and trashy, right? And it's called Whispers of the Deep by Emma Hum. And I hated this one too. I gave it 1 star. I pulled through. The first page alone I sent to my friend, and I was like, what the fuck is this? I was so annoyed by everything. My first update is at 4%, and it said I read page 1 and I'm close to DNFing. The writing is terrible. The world building non-existent. The neighboring city is given a name before we even know what the city that she lives in is called. The bad writing makes it just makes it so much less immersive. And that also is a like side point that I kind of want to make that has been the talk of book talk, where people are like, oh, I don't care about the writing as long as the story is good. And then someone was like, wouldn't you rather drive in a nice car to a palace instead of having to ride a bicycle where the seat and one wheel is missing? You know what I mean? Like, how can you not care about the vehicle that conveys the story to you, that is part of what you like about, anyway, doesn't matter. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to talk about? Like, everything about this was just bad. And another reason that I didn't like the story was that this was so clearly not really thought out. I feel like this was just like a dream the author had and then just kind of like put on the paper, because the main character, it felt like she didn't have any friends, she didn't have any family, she didn't have any ties to like her life. It felt like she didn't have like many hobbies or whatever. She was just not thought out. She was just there, and her primary reason for existence was to fulfill the romance part that the author wanted to have. And I don't really vibe with that one. That's what I mean. Like, there's a difference between bad trashy and like good bad trashy, because even just like the mention of like a sister or a best friend or whatever, like anything that makes her feel that she has depth, that she's an actual person, makes the story so much better. But alas, I feel like there was none of that. Mira doesn't have any friends or family. She's only exchanged 10 words with her boss so far. There were no other people. She doesn't appear to have a routine. This doesn't feel real. Anything to make it easier to uproot her from her old life, to implant her into the MMC's life without much struggle. Boring, yawning, sloppy, lazy. And I feel like that is faulty with a lot of fantasy books out there. It's kind of like the dead parent trope, right? To make it easier for the kids to like go off and like go on their adventure without a parent being like, hey, you should not leave for like months at a time. You need to go to school. And that's actually pretty dangerous. What I think was a little funny was that there is this, and okay, so the mermaid species and the human species obviously have like two different languages, and the way they breached the language difference was that both of them got a chip implanted that did the translation for them. Then, because I was like, I can't deal with this anymore. I need to finish a book, and I need to not hate myself after, right? So I read the entire series by Skylar Grey. Actually, I think I read every Skylar book Grey there is, because they were pretty short, and I saw someone talk about the imaginary friends. Obsession on TikTok, and I was like, this synopsis or like the setup is new and fresh and different, and I want to read it. So essentially I went into this kind of blindly, but what this book is about is there is this girl, and she moved away from this like program, is like kind of in hiding, and she gets called in because her imaginary friend is actually real and held in this facility, and they need like her help to cure him or whatever, because he's like fallen sick, but whatever. It's like a romance, and it's really interesting. And I went into this blindly. I read it and I was like, dang, this is good. I gave this 4 stars. I gave it 4. That's how good it was. It was pretty short, and I think it would have benefited from more scenes and a little more, not necessarily like filler, but like a little bit, just more, even if it was just like more romance. Also, okay, wait, pause. My thoughts are all jumbled. I said, even though it was pretty short and I wouldn't have minded if it was a bit longer for the sake of pacing, more scenes, or more time for visual descriptions, I'm pretty pleasantly surprised. The plots were plotting, the characters were fine. It was a little odd, but I'm not complaining. Obviously, it's odd. Like it's essentially like a monster fucker book, right? But I liked it. It was a different setting. It was just different, and I enjoyed it. And because I enjoyed it so much, it was like the last book in the series. I think went in reverse. And so the next book I read was, never mind. I read the third book, then the first, and then the second. So I read the second book, and it's called The Nightmare's Kiss. I gave that 2 stars, and you can see how much more disappointed I was apparently at that one. And I think reading the last book in the series first kind of set me up for disappointment, because I kind of expected the same level of commitment and, you know, tension and romance and creativity throughout the rest of the series. But the third book was the best, and thus I was kind of like let down by the rest of the books. But also I feel like if I read any of the other books in the series first, I would have never continued with the series, and thus I would have never read the third book. Anyway, all of the books are pretty short. This one felt really rushed. This was about a nightmare. And so essentially it's like always a human girly, and she like works at the facility, or she has to like come in. And I think this one worked at the facility, and she has to work with what's called the nightmare. And the nightmare is a non-corporal being that manages to like sneak into your dreams. And then she dreams about it. And the thing is, I think I would have hated it less if it wasn't immediately romance. Like these things in the facility are supposed to be like monsters. And I know that they're like misunderstood or whatever, but immediately we get like this romancy aspect where they're like cuddling and whatever, and it is spicy, but I'm like, it's so odd to like, you know, have him visit your dreams twice, and then you're like cuddling and like talking about your day and whatever. It's just I don't know. The female main character vaping in this one gave me such an ick. It was disgusting. Also, the nightmare wasn't that much of a nightmare, and I kind of wish that we would have leaned more on the monster side of things. As I said, it was like kind of like romance from the get-go, which I didn't like, because why do you have some like such an interesting concept and then you kind of like, it's a monster fucker book, why would you not make it a monster, you know what I mean? Before I jumped into the last of the series, I actually read a vampire book by her. It's called An Acquired Taste, and it's also it's like a standalone in a series because it says that it's the first book in the series, but that's the only one I read. I gave it 3 stars and I really liked it. However, the last quarter of the book was so rushed because it was so short. They had to like, you know, wrap it up. I did not vibe with it. I liked everything about this. It was because she's like this Valentine or whatever. She doesn't have money. She like signs up to be like a blood bank for like a vampire or whatever. And none of the vampires take any interest in her, but this one reclusive Lord of the Nord, right, kind of type. And he like keeps his distance and whatever. And it's so good that they make him so scarce that it just jars you when the romance starts to like really set in, because it's like a 180 and you're like, I just spent like half of the book, you know, with him kind of like absent to create this distance that they need to like breach. And now they like leap over the bridge instead of like walking across it. It should have had more pages to give us more time to like actually properly execute the romance. Actually, I gave this 2.5 stars. I was lying. I said, I don't quite know where to start. The idea of this was good and the snippets of vampire lore were really good because I think she kind of like reinvented a few things here and there, which I was really on board with. The MMC was refreshing in character, even though I started to dislike the female main character more and more throughout the book based on the terrible choices that she made. And I think I remember that there was this other dude who was just kind of there to like stir up trouble and she did not realize that. And I'm like, can we get a girl with brains in books, please, that don't vape? This book encapsulates the miscommunication trope, which I hate with a passion. The characters even admit in the second to last chapter that their conflicts could have been avoided had they simply talked to each other. And when you have characters admitting that in the book, then you know that it's bad. The book was too short for the idea. A lot of it felt surface level, like we never truly dove into the world. The romance would have benefited greatly from more time and more scenes. The confessions came too sudden and the last third of the book felt rushed. I wish we'd have gotten more tender moments between the main characters, especially because the beginning was so solid in creating distance between them and the MMC being physically and emotionally unavailable. So the setup was good. The ending and execution after the first half was not. Then I read the second book in the series of the monster research facility thing, and it's called The Revenant's Heart. And I did not necessarily want to read it because it's like a Frankenstein situation, and I have not read or watched Frankenstein's Monster. I gave this one 2 stars, and I said, a good start, an interesting premise, but the execution started flailing about halfway through. Because the second part of my review I will read out later. Because the thing is that she is like a doctor in this research facility and the Frankenstein monster dude needs her help because he is like falling apart and she needs to like fix him or whatever. I don't know. He kind of like is nice to her or whatever and like observes her, and then he kidnaps her to like leave the facility and like go dash, which was interesting. And then also we have like this like side quest later on where he kind of just wants revenge on the person that created him because he hates what he is and whatever. And the premise and the plot is interesting, but as I said, the execution just kind of it just didn't hit because the books are too short to properly develop the romance, and then you just feel really disconnected. Anyway, my second part of the review is it's almost comical that the big conflict of the story was solved by her saying, "Look at me, this isn't you." What can I say? I then read V.E. Schwab's A Darker Shade of Magic, and I gave it 4.5 stars. This was another book that was on my shelf for a very, very long time that I just was too scared to touch. I don't know why it was intimidating me, but one day I was like, okay, this is just gonna be my anywhere read, where if I'm on the train, if I have 5 minutes here, if I have 10 minutes there, I'm just gonna read it. But damn, I got invested really quickly. I do have to say, I like two characters the most. Rye and what's his name? Oh, Holland. I like the world building. It was fresh, it was new, it was different. I like the writing, it was really good. I really am so impressed by V.E. Schwab's writing, how flawlessly they managed to like go from one scene to another or from one paragraph to another. It was not choppy. It was like water cascading. You didn't even realize you went from point A to point B until you reached point B. It was really beautiful. I love the writing. Lila was getting a little on my nerves at times just because I don't like when characters inject themselves into situations they don't really know the full scope of, and they kind of like feel like it's their right and they're entitled to go on this journey or like do certain things without knowing what they're actually getting into, just because it makes them seem like stubborn or headstrong or whatever. And I don't know, but it was fine. It was just like the beginning where she was a little bit annoying. I love that I said I like Rye, but bleeding and dying, I still feel like, and I haven't read the second book yet, I still feel like Holland is too misunderstood. And I don't know if I've read too many books, but I feel like he's too smart and too misunderstood, and his backstory is too tragic for him to be entirely just pure plain evil. I'm holding out hope that he is not. He's kind of just sad. Then I read A Palate Cleanser because, as I said, it was a good fantasy book. I needed a break, and so I read Lights Out by Navessa Allen. And the more I thought about the book, the more I started to dislike it in retrospect. The premise is that she's like a nurse and she has a stalker and they like fall in love, and it's all about, it was inspired by The Masked Man on TikTok, and we actually get like TikTok references, and also he like makes TikToks, and he doesn't call it TikTok, but you know, she's on TikTok, whatever, it doesn't really friggin' matter. I kind of just hate when we have real life references in books, no matter if they take place in real life or if they're like urban fantasy or whatever. I just don't really like that because it's really cringe, because a lot of references get outdated at some point. It doesn't matter. That's my personal opinion. I expected way worse getting into this, to be honest. The MMC, I feel like, was different than what I expected him to be. He was a little bit more introspective, I guess, and a little less psycho or crazy than I thought he would be, especially with the stalking, because he was kind of like towing the line between, yeah, I'm stalking her, but also, man, this is wrong. This is kind of fucked up. I shouldn't be doing this. Which was really refreshing, instead of him just being like, no, I don't care. She is mine. Well, whatever. He's like not that kind of possessive and that kind of crazy. The book was entertaining, and like even the main character, like the female main character, was a little bit different, I guess, than other smutty female leads. But this book, where it lost me was just about like halfway through the freaking plot. It was surreal already, but then it just like catapulted me out of fucking space. It catapulted me into a different universe where I was like, absolutely not. I could have excused the first half for being a little unrealistic, but the second half, where she reveals who her family is and what they do, and then what they like end up doing and whatever, I was just absolutely freaking not. And no amount of like spice or cute dark haired nerdy dude can save this. Would I read this again? No. Would I recommend it? No. I would have recommended it up until the halfway point before we got the whole mob situation. Then I read my favorite book of the year. I loved it. And actually, I have this in physical form. I read The Jasad Heir. I loved The Jasad Heir. Everything about this was amazing. First of all, this is, okay. How do I say this? I read my own book this year, which is When Dusk Settles. And the female leads are very alike. Like, they're both super headstrong, skilled. They're kind of, I think they would actually be like really good friends if they knew each other in real life. Suffering tragic past, whatever. And I think it's really funny that both of the love interests are called Aaron. Same spelling and everything. So at first I was like, ooh, intriguing. And then I read this and I was like, damn. I think The Jasad Heir is what I have been looking for in fantasy romance for such a long amount of time. And this is what I needed. This is actual fantasy. It's not romantasy. It's fantasy, romance, enemies to lovers. It's done right. This is so good because it has plot first and foremost, and then romance second. I do wish we'd gotten a little bit more romance actually in this, and maybe even the second one, but I loved it so much. I needed a moment to get into the book, but it was amazing. Like, I finished it, I immediately got the second book. I'm so upset that the dimensions for the second one are not out yet in Germany. I love the female main character. I love the male main character. I love the side characters. Everything was just so good. The writing was really good. This book was what I have been looking for a very, very long time, because a lot of fantasy books these days are romantasy, where it's like romance first and foremost, and then you have like plot and everything else. And because the romance is kind of like put first, the plot and everything else kind of like suffers. But this is plot first, romance second, and it makes it so much better. I love when the romance is a secondary thing or a secondary plot, because it makes the yearning and the pining and the romance in itself so much better. My review says, this is what YA fantasy romance used to be like, and I'm so glad I went into this blindly. We're presented with proper enemies to lovers, real and enjoyable banter, a world with a magic system that feels real and goes way past a murky surface. I love how much thought was put into this book and its characters. It's such a stark contrast to what else is being published these days. I love intellect. I don't really have to add more, actually. Like, I really, really enjoyed this, and the romance was slow romancing, which I really enjoyed. Then, obviously, because I finished book 1, I had to jump into book 2, and I liked it equally as much. Honestly, I think I like the first books in the series way more than the conclusion. I was torn between 4 and 4.5 stars for the second book. And kind of like, I think it's kind of funny because when I think of the Jocelyn heir and I think of Aaron, my mind goes to any Aaron is a good Aaron, because my Aaron in my book is also swoony. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. My review for this one is the first half I would have liked a tad bit more romance, because if you read the book, you know what's happening. And just a little bit more. I would have wanted just a teeny tiny bit more, just to kind of like keep the embers glowing. I don't need a full-blown fire. I just need like a little glimmer. It was something I would have liked to see in the first book as well, but the payoff the payoff in this installment was really good. I love Aaron, and I really like Asaya, and I really like them together. This was proper enemies to lovers done right, which is so rare these days. I also cared a lot about the side characters. They were all written really well. There were multiple moments where I was so immersed that I had to pause reading to bite my knuckle or stifle a gasp with a pillow and hope what I just read was just my imagination. And I don't know when the last time was that I reacted so physically to something that I read. The world building was great and immersive, and while I understand the magic system and Asaya's magic in particular, I'm unsure of how much I like it, to be honest. The epilogue was really well done, and even though the very end was slightly predictable and very convenient, I can let that slide. There were many things, well, not many, I think 3. There were 3 things that I didn't really understand about the book. If you don't want spoilers, go ahead, because there are a few things that I don't understand, and I kind of just want to get it off my chest. This video is so fucking long. I'm trying to keep this short. Anyway, thing 1 that I didn't understand. After Aaron returned from Nizal, why did Aaron not tell the soldiers to stop the war? We could have ended the battle 90% into the book. There would have been no slaughter or anything, and none of the theatrics. Aaron even told her that he was the supreme now and that Nizal would stand with Jasad. So I don't understand why we had like the end battle at all. Kind of like sliding into that is, why did Asaya raise the fortress at all? She didn't know that her magic would go to all of the people beneath it once it like shattered. But why go through the theatrics of raising the fortress because she planned to shatter it anyway? Like, why did she raise it in the first place if she planned to not uphold it in the first place? She never planned to keep the fortress up because it kept the people trapped inside, but why did you raise it in the first place? Why did you not just go to the bridge and jump off? I don't get it. I know that she had to die, but I don't know why she did the whole, like, did she plan to like spread the magic? I don't think so. Because if it was like, yeah, if she shattered the fortress, the magic would go into the earth and the people and whatever, then I understand why she did it. But it appeared to me that she did not know that would happen. And then also the whole thing with how the fuck do you say it? Aveline, you know, the original people and the place that she went to in the very end. That didn't make a lot of sense to me, because the 4 of them were entombed, but when Asaya got there, it was only 3 of them waiting for her, because she was like the 4th of them, like the brother that went crazy. And they said that they killed the 4th one. It didn't explain his absence, but when Asaya, or Roviel or whatever his name is, got down there, they knew that she was him. And now they just conveniently have like a theory of bringing back magic, or have like a plan of giving their magic to the dried out land. Why did they wait so long? Why did they have to wait for Asaya in particular? Why? Where was Roviel all this time because every 100 years someone goes mad with his magic, which is like him being reborn into these people, aka like Asaya, which is why she has like all of these memories. Where is he in between? Is he entombed? If so, why did the other 3 gods not like raise him and then return the magic to the earth? Because they have no problem with him, because he's in Asaya's body, right? I don't really understand that point. It's just all just a little too convenient with Asaya's appearance down there, because why did they not start testing out the theory of giving back magic sooner? You know what I mean? If they're like, yeah, we have a plan or we have a theory, we don't really know yet, but why did they test it out? Why did they not do it sooner? Why did they wait for her? And why did they wait for her to come down there? Anyway, they didn't even know that she was going to come down there. Anyway, is Roviel dead between those like 100 years? Where is he? Is he not with the others? If he is with the others, then they could have done the whole like let's bring back magic thing. I said they didn't say they needed the 4 of them to be together to bring back the magic. I don't really get it, but that just might be me, but I just did not understand. So it was very convenient. And I think they waited like 10 years or so before they got back. And yeah, I get it. Okay, for the like sake of a happy ending, I can let that slide. Then I read One Dark Window, and I actually have the book here. I don't want to get up and hold up. Anyway, I read One Dark Window, which I DNF'd. Everyone loved it. I did not, and I didn't get the hype. At 160 pages, I had to give up because I just did not like Elspeth. And I'm going to read you my review just because it's a very long one and it encapsulates everything that I was thinking about it. I went into this with low expectations, despite the incredible hype and barely any knowledge of the plot. All I knew about was like there were cards, like magic cards. And those reads kind of like usually end up being my favorites, but this one disappointed just immensely. I just did not like it at all. The writing is terribly non-descriptive in my opinion. I can't really see anything in my mind's eye when I was reading because we're not given anything to work with. It's not even about like details. We're not being given any significant descriptors to settings. We barely even know what Elspeth looks like. When describing characters, we get the very bare minimum. Information is handed over in pretty poetic words, but the rest is missing. I don't know the sound or smell or color or shape of anything. I don't know what any room looks like. But the lack of descriptors is mirrored in the very holy writing. We're missing sentences that lead from one paragraph into the next, the guide from one motion to or act to another. It makes the writing feel like it has holes in it. It's very choppy. The book reads jumpy and jerky. It makes Elspeth a terribly boring and almost incapable narrator. Elspeth, I grew to like her name, by the way. I hated her name in the beginning. I grew to like it. Elspeth is a very bleak and unremarkable character overall. I understand that. I understand why she is that way. She needs to be that way to remain undetected and unnoticed. But if she doesn't catch or hold my attention, then other things need to do that. And it wasn't the town or village or kingdom or whatever, because I feel like, I don't know, maybe I overlooked that, but I don't know where she lived. If that was like a city or a town. I know that she lived somewhere in the woods, but it wasn't interesting enough. The descriptors too were like too curt and didn't paint a very vivid picture. It's bleak and gray and boring, and I understand that it's supposed to be like gothic or whatever, but it wasn't like gothic. It wasn't spooky or creepy. It was just boring. And the cards, they didn't really tip the scales, unfortunately. They were kind of interesting, but not interesting enough. I'm still not done with Elspeth yet, though. As I said, I understand her and why she is the way she is, but she attends this equinox in the beginning of the book, right? And it's like she seems to navigate it with the grace of a toddler. She knew that she was getting into, and yet she was wholly unprepared, which would be fine if we got any interior monologue along the lines of like, I had underestimated my nerves, my anxiety, or my stress, anything that explained why she was so incapable of keeping her head down and functioning like a normal human being despite having done so for almost half of her life. It's the same when she's presented not only with the captain, like her biggest enemy, but also another guard and a physician, and she just sits there and she's like complacent. It's just so unrealistic. Despite her fear and having put up a little bit of a fight, that girl has the survival instincts of a goldfish and it pisses me off. She's incapable of anything and her emotions are always all over the place. Side note, I can't believe that the kingdom is called Blunder. Blunder? That is so heavy-handed. That is so heavy-handed by the author. Blunder means a careless mistake, and I can't believe that is the name of the kingdom. Anyway, nothing about the romance felt real. There is no tension, and that is mostly because neither Elspeth nor Raven feel like real people. Everything is really just blah. I could not connect with or care for any characters in the story, and I tried my very best because while the premise is simple, it's still interesting to me. I tried to ignore the lack of immersive writing, lack of interesting characters, or terribly flat romance. Alas, I could not. I did not have a good time while I was reading, and I have outgrown my stubbornness to finish a book just for the sake of it. That was very, very disappointing. I kind of like skipped ahead to see if it would pick up, if I would, maybe like glimpse something of the romance where I was like, oh, I really need to, hang on for the romance, but it just did not care. I saw in the reviews that some people agreed with me, and so I was like, okay, I'm not finishing this book. I'm not gonna cling on for like a great reveal or whatever, and I don't think I regret it. Then I read I need to laugh every time I say the title. I read Warrior Princess Assassin. And to be honest, it's just so funny to me because I bet that was like the name of her draft. And the publishers were just like, let's just keep it. It doesn't really matter. Because I too title my files like the one with the princess. Oh, the one with the fae. The one where she turns into a vampire and then kills her dad. Or, just something really stupid. And I think that was like her first draft name just to like know what she was writing about and what was inside the file. And then they just didn't bother to change the title. The title also gave me the illusion that like it was just one person. Like she was a warrior princess assassin. She was a warrior first, became a princess, and then an assassin. But There were 3 people. I like Bridget Kemmerer. I read her trilogy, the Defend the Day, Dawn, whatever trilogy. I really liked that one. And I also read The Bridge Kingdom, which at the time was one of my favorite books. But I really like her. And so when I read this, I was a little confused. I gave it 3 stars. And I had many issues with this. We started off with this book and I really liked it, but then the more I read it, the less I started to like it. I also had to sit this one for a while to kind of like figure out how I felt about it and how to rate it and what to say about it, because I had so many conflicting feelings about this. I think what made this book and then good, and then better, and then kind of like burnt to a crisp was due to 3 factors. The first factor is the love triangle. We haven't had like an actual love triangle in a very, very long time, because usually it's like a love V, you know? You have like you have like the main character, like the female character, and then you have 2 guys, and the 2 guys are interested in the girl, but the guys are not interested in each other, and so it's a V and not a triangle. But here, every person is kind of like interested in everyone, and so you have a triangle. And I really liked it. I personally don't have anything against love Vs or love triangles. People are really sick of it, but if it's executed well, it can be really good. So I didn't mind this, and I actually was really fond of the fact that it's a love triangle where also the dudes are interested in each other. When it first started developing, it brought with it not only all the spicy potential, but also all the intrigue, because we have a warrior, an assassin, and a princess, and all of them are kind of like involved with each other. So the assassin is the princess's best friend. The princess is supposed to marry the warrior, who's also a king, and then the warrior kind of saves the assassin. So all of them are like kind of, you know, the characters, aside from the princess, were complex and interesting and became even more interesting when put together in any constellation. That's also where the story kind of like falls apart, because Asher and Kai, so Asher is the assassin and Kai is the warrior, aka the king. Asher and Kai becoming so close started to ruin the princess character. They were so busy like healing and understanding each other that they made her seem incapable and incompetent as a person. Even like as a friend, they the assassin, like Asher, just like kind of pushed her away, and it was just really demeaning. I hated reading about that. They sought her out for their own comfort and then shamed her for not understanding them, because she grew up like very sheltered and she didn't find out that her best friend was an assassin until the point where she found out that he was an assassin. And then she was hurt that he kept this from her, and he was like, yeah, I didn't want to hurt you. And then he turns around and he throws that fact in her face, and I was like, you can't have it both ways. You can't be mad at her for something that she didn't know. They sought her out for their own comfort and then shamed her for not understanding them. Jory, so the princess's character and growth were sacrificed just to gain some romance between the MMCs, and it felt like an injustice. Not only that, but they berated Jory so often that I stopped understanding why they liked or loved her or were drawn to her at all, which is like crazy to sacrifice one of the romances, essentially, but just like keeping it going. They made her seem so incapable that I was wondering why they pursued the romance at all. Like, it would have made more sense for them to drop her entirely and just make this a BL, essentially. Even the saving grace moments weren't enough to re-establish her character or connect her emotionally to the MMCs. Jory felt romantically out of place at about halfway through the book, and that rubbed me really the wrong way. She also entirely rubbed me the wrong way. Like, overall, she had so much potential and I was really looking forward to her arc, but we never got that. Like, as I said, her character was sacrificed for the others to have growth, for the others to like develop a romance. And maybe that's the feminist in me, but I hated that. To sacrifice a female character so the male characters can gain anything? Get out of my face. Jory didn't really grow at all throughout the story. Her growth was stunted in favor of the MMCs, right? For them to like share tender moments together or whatever, but that's just that's not entirely on her. Anyway, I think what's kind of like making my point is, and I'm just gonna read it out as well. I said, I can't believe Asher hid all of his misery that's tied to the injustice of her kingdom and then threw that into her face. Like, he blamed her for the injustice in her kingdom without telling her that there is like injustices in her kingdom, while knowing that she was sheltered by her brother and that she never set foot out of the palace. I can't believe he shamed her for the things she didn't know because he kept her in the dark. You are what you know, brother, okay? And if you keep terrible things a secret from her, you cannot adapt and change. And most of all, I can't believe no one called Asher out on it. Like, he just did that in front of all of these people multiple times, shamed her for the things that she didn't know, or shamed her for being like unaware or like trying to help even though she didn't really know how to. And no one stepped in and said anything. The third point that made this an kind of like unenjoyable read was the loss of potential. The story was really interesting up until the halfway point due to the complexity of the story and the characters relationships all with each other. We had so much potential for pining and yearning and suffering because, like, you know, everyone is kind of like emotionally involved with everyone, and there's like a forced marriage, and then one of them is supposed to be like a prisoner, and there's like the marriage like for political gain and whatever, and the question of like actual love that arises from it. You know, when you have like the setup of like a political or like an arranged marriage, you also always have like the question, oh, is this real? And then it just amps up the stakes, right? It just makes it so much better. It makes the yearning and the pining so much better. The setup is really good, but I feel like as soon as we step foot into the kingdom of the warrior, aka the king, it all just like dissipates. Since they set foot into the other kingdom, the story became really boring and tiring, and the possibility for all the tropes that I just mentioned just evaporated into nothing. It felt as though all the stakes suddenly kind of like lost their meaning. Overall, I only know for sure that I like the first half of the book. I'm unsure if I will read the second book once it's released because I don't like the female main character anymore, and I'm sure that she will not change. In the end, they were talking about like, oh, you should be queen, you should, you know, blah. She would make a terrible queen. She would make a terrible person. She didn't grow at all. And in the second book, at the point that they're in within the story, it's too late for her to change. That should have come first. I then DNF'd another book. Damn, this is so freaking long. I then DNF'd. This is also a rant because my best friend is also reading, but she doesn't read the same books as I do, and so I don't have anything to talk with about the books that I read. So this is my outlet, I guess. I then DNF'd Wings of Starlight by Alison Saft. Not because it was bad, but I read about halfway. I read about half of the book, but I'm too old for this. I'm not the primary demographic for this book, I think. The romance was good and the main characters were decent, but it's just, I did not care. It read so young. It read so young that if it was adapted, it would be like a PJ-0 film. And I moved on to Jennifer L. Armentrout. Jennifer L. Armentrout is my guilty pleasure author just because she has so many books that are kind of like all the same, but you just kind of like enjoy them. It's kind of like good, bad, and trashy, you know what I mean? And I read Fall of Ruin and Wrath, and obviously this was not my first Jennifer L. Armentrout book. So I read this, I gave it 3.5 stars. I was a little confused about the pacing, I was a little bit confused about the characters, but as always, like, it just kind of like got me. I read it, I was like, nothing's happening. I was about halfway through the book all of a sudden, and then I was done. The cliffhanger was like really good. I hated a decision that the female character made because I feel like sometimes authors forget what their characters are like, and she made a decision that doesn't correlate with who she is as a person and the choices that she's made before. I'm overlooking that, but I was finished with the book and I was like, damn, this is so good. I think it was like 1 or 2 in the morning. I was like, I don't care that I have to work in the morning. I need book 2 now. I went to go get it. It is not out yet. I'm sorry. It's not even in the works. It's not planned yet. And I think I saw on her Instagram that she first needs to finish the Primal of Blood and Ash or whatever. I love that all of her titles are kind of like the same. The Primal of Bone and Ash, Shadow of Bone and Blood, The Story of Ash and Fire. I don't know. But she needs to finish one series first, or she wants to finish one series first, and then she's going to work on this one. I think there was a plan or like a comment made that she wants to release the second part of the book in 2026, and I really hope so because I'm invested in this really good, bad, and trashy book, and I need to know what happens next. And I was so heartbroken because I need to wait for an indefinite amount of time for me to keep reading, and that hurt. Was this my favorite read? Absolutely not. I don't even know what the main character is called anymore, but it's just, I don't know. Jennifer L. Armentrout has like this way of writing stupid, kind of like repetitive characters and storylines, and yet they still kind of like get you. And then we get to the last book that I read this year. I mean, I think from my reaction alone, you can tell that this is a little bit uncomfortable. I read This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi, and I wanted to love this so bad. I gave it 2 stars. I didn't like Shatter Me either. I didn't like the prose in Shatter Me. This was better, but I did not really connect with Eliza, the main character in this one. And I don't know why. I feel like I don't really know her as a person. I feel like there are so many conflicting things that we learned about her that I can't really peg her. I can't really give her a character trait because things that she does and things that she says, they are on two. It's like she does a thing and she does another thing, and both are on the opposite end of a spectrum. And then she says one thing and then she says another thing, and they're also on the opposite. It's just, I can't really pin her down. The only thing I can say kind of for certain is that she's intelligent. but also not really, because of the choices that she makes. It's really hard. I don't know. I was so ready to love this. I pushed off reading this because I needed time to ready myself to dive into a series, because I think this is 4 books or 4 books and ongoing. This entire book takes place over 2 or 3 days. And then I found out that the second book, which is almost equally as many pages as this one, is about 24 hours. And that's when I checked out, because I was debating on reading the second book because I liked the way that this ended. And then I found out that 400 pages is like taking place over 24 hours, and the tropes for the second book are like enemies to lovers, and we do get the yearning and pining in the second book already. And I'm like, over the course of 24 hours, you go from hating each other and being enemies to pining after one another. I would rather rip my own throat out than read something like that. And the thing is with this one, the pacing was so slow that it felt like nothing was happening in this book. I feel like the actual like things I can count on one hand that happened. The pacing was so odd, and it was like almost 500 pages. And the thing is that even people who rated the first book 5 stars rated the second book less, because it's like a filler book, because they said nothing is happening. And I'm like, in the first book nothing happened. And if people enjoyed this one and the people who loved the first one say that nothing happens in the second book, then I will hate the second book, so I'm not even going to read it. I didn't connect with the romance at all. I didn't connect with the romance at all. There was so much potential, and the things that the MMC said would have been so good if we had just picked up the pacing a little bit more, had more instances where the characters actually got to know each other. Let me just read you my review. I think that makes more sense. The pacing was so slow that it felt as though nothing happened. It's why I did not connect with the romance at all. Eliza and Cameron. Eliza is a djinn who's like in hiding, and then Cameron is the crown prince about to become king of the kingdom that they all live in. They simply don't know each other, despite being able to draw conclusions about each other's characters based on actions, but it simply wasn't enough to be a base for infatuation, especially considering they've barely exchanged 4 sentences before Cameron became near obsessed with Eliza. I also don't know if I like the way Cameron spoke about women who were not Eliza. That is something that bothered me a lot, actually. Throughout the story, things felt unprompted or unrealistic, like the confrontation between Cameron and Cyrus during the ball, or how the apothecary guy, Dean, I forgot his name, was taken by Eliza upon like meeting her. Additionally to the romance, it frustrated me all the more, especially since so very little happened in the first place. It just, the feelings like ballooned out of nowhere. It was so weird. The best part of the book was the second to last sentence, and the way we left off is a great hook for the second book, but I don't know if I will read it. I also don't understand, and like this is a spoiler warning if you haven't read it, but I don't understand is Cyrus makes an appearance, and from fan art that I've seen, I know that Cyrus is like endgame. He is like the enemy king to Cameron, and he takes Eliza with him after the revelation that the king of their kingdom is like the bad guy. I don't get why she hates Cyrus, because she's like, I hate you, how dare you, whatever. He didn't do anything bad. He came to the ball, he exposed the king, Cameron's grandfather, for eating children's brains to remain young forever, and then she hates him. What? The devil himself came to you, Eliza, and told you about this prophecy, so you knew that this was happening. You just didn't know who it was. Cyrus tells you who it is this terrible, irredeemable thing, and you hate the messenger? She calls Cyrus a monster. I don't get it. That is so stupid. That is so beyond dumb. So yeah, the romance was just fucking instant love, and I was kind of like waiting, because they didn't exchange more than 4 sentences with each other before Cameron just gets so obsessed, and then they meet in the attic and they kiss. He's like, tell me you'll come for me, don't leave me. He's ready to like marry her, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? What is going on? I was kind of like waiting for the stupid like K-drama trope, like, oh, they knew each other during childhood, or they're destined to be with each other, you know, just anything that kind of like reasonably explains why there is so much attraction in the first place that is based on nothing. Because yes, Cameron, as I said, he can kind of like draw conclusions about Eliza's character based on what he sees her do, but he's seen her twice, and he doesn't know her character. Just because someone seems like a good person doesn't mean that you like the rest of them. He likes the idea of Eliza, and Eliza likes the idea of Cameron, but they don't fucking know each other. And to be like, tell me you come to the ball for me, tell me you came here for me, tell me you won't leave me behind, and he's like, I'm thinking of I could marry her, I need to marry a queen, I can marry her. Excuse me? And so, I don't know. I think Tahara is just not my author. I think like her ideas are really good, and I think the writing is good, but the execution is just not for me. And I think that's a difference that we all need to make. And that's why this video was so long. I tell you about these books and I tell you what I like and didn't like about it. I give you like little like reviews, I guess, and like little glimpses into my subjective opinion about these books. But just because I didn't like it doesn't mean that you can't like it. And just because I think that Tahara is just like, her books are just too, I was gonna say they're too fast paced. That is not true. Like, the romance is too fast paced in a book that is too slow paced. That is not for me. It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it. There's a reason why this book is so popular, right? So yeah, currently I'm reading, well, I started last night. I only read like one chapter before I fell asleep, but I started reading The Weaver Bride. I'm filming this video now because I don't have a lot of time until the end of the year, and I don't think I will finish any other book. If I do, I will insert my review and ramblings about them now. Anyway, I don't have a lot of time for reading anymore, which is really sad. And so I'm really quick to DNF books that I don't vibe with, just because I value my time a lot. But as I said, it's my subjective opinion, and I'm giving you my review and my critique of these books because I try to handle things that I read critically. Tell me your thoughts. Oh, okay. My winner of this year is definitely The Jesset Crown and The Jesset Heir. The other way around, The Jesset Heir and The Jesset Crown. My least favorite book, well, not one I DNF, because I feel like that doesn't count. My least favorite book of this year that I read was probably, oh yeah, Whispers of the Deep. That fucking sucked. I hated that. That was so bad. That's it. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your favorite book of the year was. Let me know what your worst read of the year was. Let me know what you think. If you've read any of the books that I did, what you thought about them. And also, if you read The Jesset Crown, then maybe you can answer my questions that I had. Enlighten me a little bit, because I was really confused. If you are still here, thank you so much for listening to me ramble. If you like to listen to me ramble, I have this video where I recap a Harry Styles fanfic that I wrote when I was like 14. So go ham, watch that. It's entertaining. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye!